Now, looking at touchdowns, like I said, rushing touchdowns this season, Jonathan Taylor leads the NFL with 12. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Wednesday. Middle of the week. Tomorrow we have another NFL football game to look forward to. But today we'll be talking about Sunday's games. We'll be looking at the top players for the season stats. So we looked at the game stats on Monday a little bit and on Tuesday as well. And now today we'll look at the season stats, and we really are getting into some interesting territory here as we near the middle of the season. We've already got a few players that are looking to at least break an NFL, not break, but make it into the top 10 of an NFL season record. And specifically, say, receiving, rushing, a couple of different players there. So we're going to start looking at that. And I'm only going to point out one or two of those today or tomorrow, depending on how long we go today. But already after 8 games, we've got some players on a pace to possibly set an NFL record for a season. For example, Jonathan Taylor in touchdowns rushing. So we'll look at that. That's a hard record to break. I'm not sure he can break the record, but he's definitely on a pace to make it into the top 10 easily. So we'll look at that today, I think. And then if not today, we'll do it tomorrow, but probably today for that one at least, because we will talk about running backs for sure. And then this is probably going to be an episode or a podcast that material I've compiled here, probably run today and tomorrow. So at the end of this, looking at the season numbers so far, we'll look at the standings. A lot of changes, a lot of games that teams needed to win who didn't win or did win and now, have positioned themselves a little bit better. So we'll take a look at that as well. All right, so let's get started. And like I said, we'll start with the passing game. We'll start with passing yards. Now, Justin Herbert has been up he dropped out, then he got back up in the top when he had that 400-yard game, and he's still up there. Justin Herbert for the Chargers has 2,140 yards passing. Patrick Mahomes, after putting up almost 300 yards on Monday night, has 2,099. Those are your top two. Patrick Mahomes jumped quite a few people on that Monday night game. Now, Matthew Stafford has 1,866, but he's played one less game than, say, Patrick Mahomes and Herbert. So we'll see what happens, as this season goes and the numbers start to catch up with each other as everybody does their bye week. But right now, you got 4 players with more than 2,000 yards. And unlike some of the stats we'll look at, nobody here so far is challenging any top 10 NFL records with his yardage we have. No one's jumping off the map here so far. And in fact, as I mentioned, if you listen to my previous podcast yesterday, was only 2 players, I should say, that passed for over 300 yards. And Patrick Mahomes had 299, but still only 2 players this last week. It was kind of a slow week in the passing and receiving department, so nothing big there. Now, when we're looking at touchdowns, Matthew Stafford, despite the fact that he was on a bye week, still is tied with Patrick Mahomes for the passing touchdown lead with 17. So he had 5 in the game against the Jaguars that jumped him up to number 1, and then he was able to hang on despite, like I said, not even playing this past week. So he has a chance to put up some pretty big numbers here in the passing department. But again, when you double the numbers, 34, he should get to 40. somewhere around there, but that's not going to be good enough to make it into the top 10, for the NFL. But we will, not only will I look at NFL records, top 10s, but we'll look at teams' top 10s as well and see where some players might place themselves in the top 10 for their team as we get going in the season, farther into the season. But right now, Stafford and Mahomes, 17 touchdowns apiece. You've got 3 players with 16. Rodgers, Prescott, and Herbert all have 16. And then you've got Jared Goff. You have 5 more players with 15. Goff, Hurts, Tagovailoa, Nix, and May. So now Goff is another one, bye week. He leads the NFL, I believe, in touchdowns in a single game with 5, as well as Stafford had 5 as well. So those two in single game. Looking at these numbers, you got Drake May, Bo Nix, both with 15. These are guys in their second year. Pretty impressive players right now, both of them. Drake May's looked really good, and Bo Nix not bad himself. All right, so now on the other end of the scale, thankfully for Geno Smith, who leads the NFL in interceptions with 10. He didn't play last week, so he didn't add to that total. Now, Tua Tagovailoa did play. He did have an interception, I believe, but he did throw 4 touchdown passes. So he really had a much better game after 2 weeks of 3 interceptions in 2 straight games. He had a much better game this past week. So he's tied with Geno Smith with 10 right now. Now, Jake Browning for the Bengals has 8. He hasn't played in several weeks, but he's still number 3 right now, hanging on to that interception total. And who knows, right now, Joe Flacco's 5th with 6, and that's a combination between the Bengals and the Browns. He does have a sore shoulder, but it looks like he should play. But if he doesn't play, Jake Browning would probably start and have a chance to increase his interception lead or totals. Now, Cam Ward comes in at 6 with 6, as well as Joe Flacco. There's 9 players with 5 interceptions. So right now, it's really just Geno Smith and Tua, both with 10, which is 2 more than the next worst player, when you want to look at it like that. All right, now being sacked. Now this is Cam Ward. He is one of those players, and we'll look at it after this next week. He's on record pace at this point. He's got 34 sacks. He's been sacked 34 times. Drake May is second with 28. So there's the big lead that Cam Ward has in this category. 34 after 8 games. That gives him 68 after 16. The record, I believe, is 73. So he's somewhere right up there around the record for most times being sacked in a single season. He's on pace, I should put it that way. We'll see how he does. He just he needs better players on his team, is honestly the truth. So we'll see what happens with him. But it's a rough season, a rough rookie year for him. Now, Drake May, 28, like I said, second-year guy, does run around a little bit. And you notice this with all the top 5. Jalen Hurts is third with 25. He runs around a lot. Also tends to hold the ball a little bit longer than some quarterbacks do. Justin Herbert has 22, as does Justin Fields. Now, Justin Fields he leads the NFL with 9 sacks in a single game. He's had a couple of bad games, but last week, what a great game he had when they finally got their first victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. I think if he was sacked, I think it was only maybe once. So he really improved in that category. We'll see if that holds or if that was just a one-game type of thing. Trevor Lawrence has 20. He's in 6th. Now, he didn't play, so obviously his numbers will go up. He had been one of the least sacked the first 5 games, and in the last 2 games, sacked 7 times in each of them. So I'm not sure what the problem is there, except the traditional thing. It's not so much the line as it's the quarterback. He hangs on to that ball, waiting and waiting to throw it, and waiting for the perfect whatever for his wide receivers or running back, whoever he's throwing it to, instead of just throwing it. So we'll see. Hopefully the bye week has helped him to look at what he's doing wrong and can come out and do much better. I listened to one of the Jaguar local shows, and they talked about that. And when he was sacked 7 times in the last game, 5 of them at least were not his fault. Were his fault, not the line's fault. He just held the ball too long. You can't expect a line to be blocking for 5 to 8 seconds. You got to get rid of that ball after about 3 seconds tops, and he's just not doing it. So that's top 6. Then you've got some other players on here. Spencer Rattler, 18. He was benched. We'll see what happens with him. And that is a look at our quarterbacks. Now, looking at these running backs, now here's one we want to talk about. Jonathan Taylor, 850 yards. We'll look at him when it comes to the touchdowns. Him and James Cook. James Cook has 753 yards, but he had a bye week. So both of these players are averaging a fair amount over 100 yards a game. So they're both on pace then for 1,700 yards at least this season, which would not be enough to put them in the top 10, but they are on a much better pace than the next best player, which is J.K. Dobbins and Javonte Williams. Dobbins for the Broncos has 634, and Williams for the Cowboys has 633. So they're bringing up third and fourth. But, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, 850 yards. He had another 153 yards this past week. James Cook jumped all the way up here because he had a 216-yard game. So he was just right in the middle of the pack of these top 10 players position-wise, and then he has a 200-yard game, jumps him all the way up to number 2. And like I said, he's averaging over 100 yards a game, which means that he's right there on the same pace as Jonathan Taylor, who has 850. These two guys are ready to hit 1,000 yards after they're, on pace after halfway through the season to have 1,000 yards. So we're looking at two players maybe that have seasons that Barkley and Henry had last year. But we'll see if they can keep. You really have to have well over 100 yards a game to get to 2,000 yards or 1,900 yards. Now, Saquon Barkley, speaking of him, he finally made it onto the top 10. He had his first big game, had 150 yards. Really looked good in that game. It's the first one he's looked that good. He just didn't. The previous games, he looked more hesitant. This game, he was really busting it open and looked much better. So he makes it into the top 10, 10th exactly with 519 yards on the season. And everybody, most people did think you just can't put up another 2,000-yard season after you did it the previous year. I mean, not only did he do 2,017 games, then you have all the playoff games. You go to the Super Bowl. So you're all the way into February. You've been running. So, he racked up 2,500 yards of rushing, last season. So that's a lot. That's a toll, and who knows, maybe it just took him a little while to get going here. Maybe we'll see what happens, but he did have a good game this last week. Maybe that's an opener for him to really start racking up some big games. All right, so that's a look at that. One of the interesting ones to me is Rico Dowdle's fifth with 605 yards. He did so well. Had a 200-yard game, 200-plus yard game, had a 183-yard game. And then Hubbard comes back, and Rico Dowdle is the second-string running back. I don't get it. Well, how can he's playing so well? Now, maybe he can't take as many carries as he was doing while Hubbard was gone, but you would think that he's putting up such good numbers that you would not want to have him off the field as much as they are. But that's the Carolina Panthers. I don't understand it personally. Not only that, he's catching some passes as well. So I'm not saying Hubbard's a bad player, but man, Rico Dowdle made a huge difference when he was in there while Hubbard was out. So we'll see if that continues that way, with Dowdle being more the second running back off the bench. All right, now looking at touchdowns, like I said, rushing touchdowns this season, Jonathan Taylor leads the NFL with 12 already, 12. Josh Jacobs for the Packers has 9. Javonte Williams has 8. James Cook, has 7. Now, James Cook and Derrick Henry, who has 6, led the NFL last year with, I believe, 16, along with maybe it was Jahmyr Gibbs, who has 6 himself. Those guys are 4th, 5th, and 6th right now. Not on a pace like they were on last year. Though James Cook did have 2 touchdowns this week, as did Derrick Henry. So that helped them jump into the top 5. But Jonathan Taylor already has a couple games with 3 touchdowns in a game, and then had another one this past week. He's got 12 already. So when we look at that, for the Indianapolis Colts right now, on a season level, on a career level, Jonathan Taylor has 63 touchdowns rushing for the Indianapolis Colts. He had 61. He got 2 more. 63 ties him with Lenny Moore for second all-time Indianapolis Colts history as far as rushing touchdowns. Edgar and James is first with 64. So he only needs 1 more to tie, 2 more to become the leading touchdown rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. And he's going to get it. I mean, he's averaging almost 2 a game right now. So he should get it either next week. He'll probably tie the record next week at least, and then pass it maybe next week as well. We'll just see. But he's on such a good pace right now. All right. And when we're looking at, and this is one of them I wanted to talk about, like I said, he has 12 rushing touchdowns. So if you watch this podcast, I'm going to put these charts up on the web, on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, you'll see all these charts. But so what I'm looking at right now is rushing touchdowns for a season all time in the NFL. LaDainian Tomlinson has 28 rushing touchdowns in a single season. I don't think, I know Taylor's not on a pace for 28. He's got 12 now. You double that. That's 24. He could get to 25, 26, maybe 20. He's close. He's right in there. But there's 5 players that have 21 touchdowns that compile part of the top 10 list here. He's easily on pace to get into the top 10 in more than 21 or more. I mean, he already got 12. He only needs 9 the rest of the season. So much, and he has an extra game to play to do that. So 9 games to get 11. I mean, 9 games to get 9 touchdowns. I mean, he's on a better pace than that. John Riggins has 24. He's in 5th. Emmitt Smith has 25. And then Priest Holmes and Sean Alexander have 27. And then, like I said, Tomlinson has 28. So Jonathan Taylor's on a pace to make it in the all-time list of rushing touchdowns. Now, no one's been on this list this many touchdowns in a single season since 2006. And that's when LaDainian Tomlinson set the record, was in 2006. So it's been 19 years since anybody's been on the top 10 at all. So here's a guy that finally has a chance to break into that top 10 list. Pretty interesting that Sean Alexander in 2005 set the record with 27, and then in 2006, LaDainian Tomlinson came through with 28. Yeah, there's nobody on this list after 2006. I don't know why not, because you have people from 2002, 3, 5, and 6 on the list. Now, Priest Holmes was able to break into this list twice. That's impressive. He had 27 in 2003 and 21 in 2002. Emmitt Smith for the Cowboys had 21 in 94 and 25 in 95. They're the only players on this list twice. That's hard to do. We're talking about 21 touchdowns in a single season. That's why Emmitt Smith leads the NFL all time in rushing touchdowns for a career. I believe he has like 164. It's a hard record to break. And only, I've talked about this before, but just recently and probably on Monday, Derrick Henry now is 5th all time in rushing touchdowns. I think he has 112, something like, yeah. And when you look at the next running back that's currently playing, I think he has like 85 or something. I mean, it's so far behind Derrick Henry. There's no active player that's anywhere near the top 10 other than Derrick Henry. That's how good he's been on a career basis. Obviously, there's players, Christian McCaffrey's a great player, but he's been hurt so many times that it's really hindered his career numbers. But back to, so we can keep moving on. Jonathan Taylor is on a pace to set some records. We'll see what he does. Now, rushing yards by quarterback, Justin Fields leads this category with 288 yards. Patrick Mahomes has 280. They're your top 2 players. Josh Allen, 261. Drake May, 250. Now, Jaden Daniels has 211. He'd probably be at the top of this list, but he's missed a couple of games so far. And same with Kyler Murray. He's missed a few games. They're both in the top 10, and yet they haven't played as many games as the rest of these guys on the list. That's a quick look at those guys. No one's jumping out on this list right now. Justin Fields, surprisingly, did not run that many times. He kind of contained himself. Now, here's another number we're going to start looking at in receptions. That's Jamar Chase. 70 receptions this season. And prior to Flacco, he wasn't even in the top 10. He's just leapfrogged over everybody in the last few weeks. Another 12 receptions this past game. He's got 70. Christian McCaffrey second with 56. Now, Puka Nacua was the guy that would have been right up here with Jamar Chase because he's third with 54 and he hasn't played in 2 weeks. So he would have probably been right up here with Chase as far as the total goes. And if he can get back into the game, he'll probably start trying to work his way back up this list. But really, on this list, it's Jamar Chase is by far leading the NFL in receptions. Now, last year he did the same thing, led the league in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns. So he's gotten back up on the lead, into the lead with receptions. He's got to work on the other 2 categories because despite 12 receptions last week, he only had 91 yards versus somebody, say, like Smith-Njigba, who leads the NFL in passing yards because he's getting so many more yards per catch. Now back to Jamar Chase, and here's another top 10 season thing we're already looking at because he's got 70 receptions right now. Number 10 on the list for the Cincinnati Bengals in all-time receptions is Chad Johnson. In 2007 had 93. So, I mean, in 2 weeks, Jamar Chase could make it into the top 10. I mean, he's got 70. He's averaging well over 10. He's averaging 10 catches a game. So a couple weeks, and that's really, he's averaging more if you just go back the last 4 weeks. He's doing even better than that. But at 10 catches a game, he'll be into the top 10 in 2 to 3 weeks and with plenty of the season to go. Now, last year, like I said, he led the NFL in receptions. He also set the record for most receptions by a Cincinnati Bengal with 127. So he's on pace to break his own record. He's already on the list twice. He got the top 2 of the top 3. The only one in second was TJ Houshmandzadeh in 2007, who had set the record with 112. What's interesting here is, you think if you're thinking about the Cincinnati Bengals right now as a passing team, they've only got 4 players, and actually Chase did it twice. So 3 players who have done it 4 times, 100 or more receptions. And 2 of them, Chase and Carl Pickens, have exactly 100. That's it. I do think there'll be 5 when Chase gets done this season. And one more quick comment about Jamar Chase. Number 10 all-time is Chase, ranked 9th and 10th all-time in receptions with 127. Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs, who did it in 2020 for the Bills. So he's on pace to break into the top 10 all-time again put his name up there twice. There's only a couple of players like Antonio Brown. In fact, he may be the only one who's made it in the top 10 twice. All right, we'll keep a track of that as well because him and Taylor are really making some moves. All right, yardage. Like I said, Jackson Smith-Njigba leads the NFL with 819 yards. He's averaging well over 100 yards a game. Now, Jamar Chase has jumped up to second with 720, but he's having to do it on a lot more receptions. So 70 receptions, that means he's averaging just over 10 yards a catch, while Smith-Njigba has 819 on 50 receptions. Huge difference as far as how many yards he's getting per reception. But we'll watch him. Smith-Njigba's on a pace to pretty good pace right now to maybe make it in the top 10. It's going to be tight for that. That's a much more difficult category to make it in, I think. All right, one more we'll check out here. Well, let me look at a couple more. Puka Nacua is still number 4 with 616 yards, and he's missed a couple of games. Pretty impressive, his numbers. And Emeka Egbuka, the rookie, is number 7 right now with 562 yards. So as a rookie, he's still in the top 10 here. He's looking good. I'm expecting soon to see 2 Cowboys in this list when CeeDee Lamb starts racking up some big numbers. Right now, Pickens is 3rd with 685 for the Cowboys, and we should see another one soon, I think, anyway. All right, that's a quick look at the receiving yards on the season. And then one more category. Nobody's standing out here, and that's in receiving touchdowns. Dallas Goedert and Amon-Ra St. Brown both have 7. Now, St. Brown didn't even play last week. He's still tied for 7th. Then you've got 5 players with 6. And then you've got 6 players with 5. So no one's jumping out in this particular category. No worries here that any kind of record's going to be broken as far as receiving touchdowns go. All right, so we'll call it a wrap with that. We'll pick this up tomorrow and we'll look at some more season numbers as well as the standings. We've got some all-time numbers again to look at as we get closer as we go through the season. But tomorrow we'll look at another all-time record that's on possibly could be broken. All right, appreciate you listening. Like I said, you can find this on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. And if you do watch it, you'll be able to see all the charts I'm putting up. You'll see the players who are in the top 10 in whatever category I happen to mention. So that's one benefit of watching. Plus, I put up the charts now. I'm trying to do that consistently, and that way you're not just looking at me talking, which then you might as well just listen to it. But you can listen if that's where you're doing it, like in the car or whatever. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or whatever app you might use, as well as on YouTube if you're just listening through YouTube. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. It's helpful as I continue to grow. I keep working on improving it in different ways when I come across one. Any ideas, you can let me know, putting in the comments on YouTube or wherever you might listen, or you can email me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. All right, thanks for listening, and that is a wrap for Top 10s for Wednesday. Until tomorrow, I'm out.